Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Thursday, July 27th, 2017, and you're tuned in to episode 297 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Our top story of the day continues to be owned by Tom Angel over at MassRoots, who picked up on some Congressional committee action that went down yesterday in Washington, D.C. involving marijuana, its current status as a Schedule I drug, and the Drug Enforcement Agency, or DEA. During a congressional hearing held yesterday to consider the reauthorization of the White House Office of National Drug Control Policy, or ONDCP, Committee Chair and Republican Trey Gowdy of North Carolina pressed Richard Baum, acting ONDCP director, on the reasoning behind marijuana's Schedule I status, which is responsible for many of the federal legislative roadblocks cannabis faces in the realms of banking, scientific research, and medical use. Citing the definition of a Schedule I drug as an inherently dangerous substance for which there's no medicinal value, and pointing out that marijuana does not appear to fit that definition, Congressman Gowdy asked Mr. Baum if there was any appetite within the ONDCP for studying the merits of cannabis's scheduling status being updated. Mr. Baum said while the Trump administration, quote, doesn't have a position on that, unquote, his agency supported efforts to learn more about medical marijuana and wanted to address any obstacles that might prevent good research. Might want to invest in a mirror. Swing over to Tom's piece for the full read on this one. On Tuesday, the Nevada Supreme Court upheld the lower court's decision that lets stand the state's registration process for medical marijuana patients. The case in question involved an unnamed Las Vegas man upset over the requirement that he disclose his identity to become a registered medical marijuana patient. Citing a fear of being persecuted by federal officials, the suit also claimed that the fees charged by the state for medical marijuana registration cards were unreasonable. On Tuesday, Nevada's highest court reaffirmed the validity of how the state handles its medical marijuana programs on both counts. Our final top story of the day is the potential glut of cannabis supply in California that's coming down the time pipeline as harvest schedules advance. Hezekiah Allen, executive director of the Cannabis Growers Association, warned that the Golden State could have up to 8 times as much cannabis as the legal market needs without any way to export it without running afoul of federal law. Mr. Allen made his remarks during a panel discussion at the Sacramento Press Club that included Lori Ajax, chief of the California Bureau of Medical Cannabis Regulations, and Joe Devlin, the top cannabis official for the city of Sacramento. While Devlin thought the figure of 8 times the amount of cannabis cultivated than needed for legal sales was a bit high, his estimate of 5 times the amount wasn't terrifically far off. However that number lands, it's almost certain that the state is going to have to figure out some way to handle its overrun of cannabis cultivation. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, Extractioneering, makers of the finest legal marijuana concentrates and extracts around. Led by PhD biochemist Dr. Dan Hayden, Extractioneering puts a premium on delivering a product that has all of the good stuff and none of the bad. Once you try their golden amber sugars, syrups, and crumbles, you won't settle for any other legal concentrates provider. Check out photos and videos of their work over at extractioneering.com, which is spelled like engineering but with the word extraction. That's extractioneering.com. All right, time for the blitz. LA Weekly is a great piece up that looks at a proposed ban within the city of Los Angeles on manufacturing marijuana concentrates. After LA citizens passed a voter referendum in March setting up a legal market, the city council has been working on writing the rules and regulations that will govern legal marijuana cultivators, processors, and dispensers. One of the proposed rules bans the use of volatile chemicals to create marijuana extracts, something that experts say would drive business and tax dollars to surrounding municipalities. This is a good one to open up and read. Marijuana's social network and website MassRoots recently announced that it has raised $1.2 million in venture capital to support its ongoing operations. In May, the company disclosed that it would need to raise $5 million within the next year to keep its doors open, with their most recent quarterly revenue just cresting over the $100,000 mark. This most recent raise comes not long after MassRoots announced their acquisition of Odavia, an Oregon-based company that makes a point-of-sale system for marijuana dispensaries. John Schroyer over at Marijuana Business Daily has a good piece up, pulling together a comprehensive look at the main threats the legal marijuana industry is facing with an aggressively hostile Trump administration unleashing prohibitionist Jeff Sessions. As John points out, the two main weaknesses currently out under exposure are the 2013 Cole Memo, which lays out the criteria by which the federal government was able to tolerate state legal marijuana, and the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment, which bars the federal government from spending money persecuting medical marijuana cultivators, processors, dispensers, and users. Another good one to dive into fully. Writer and Freedom of Information Act fan Andrew Cormier nicely detailed his ongoing fight to get the Massachusetts State Police to turn over marijuana arrest records for the month following the passage of last year's adult use legalization ballot measure. Mr. Cormier started asking back in December and has played a game of bureaucratic tag with the state police ever since. A game that set him back $180 in fees, but that has revealed, as of yet, no actual data. In his piece over at MuckRock, Cormier says that he wanted to see how the arrest numbers were affected by the passage of the legalization measure and walks his readers through the 3 appeals he's had to file in the process, with his most recent victory coming a little over a week ago. We'll report back once those numbers come in if they reveal anything interesting. Yesterday, the state of Pennsylvania announced that the registration process for doctors wishing to participate in their soon-to-launch medical marijuana system was open. Rachel Levine, Pennsylvania's acting Secretary of Health, announced the news yesterday, saying that any willing physician could become qualified to recommend medical marijuana after registering and taking a 4-hour educational course on the medicinal use of cannabis. Philly.com ran a good interview with Ms. Levine that goes into the program in more detail. Marijuana consultancy Medicine Man Technologies just announced the closing of their acquisition of Colorado-based consultancy, the Denver Consulting Group. I first reported on this news back in May, with the actual effective closing date being July 24th. In all, Medicine Man paid $3.5 million in stock for the Denver Consulting Group. And finally for today, I just want to apologize to the world for my home state's Governor Paul LePage, who recently said that he wanted Maine state lawmakers to overturn the will of the people by keeping marijuana illegal, and that he asked Attorney General Jeff Sessions to crack down on the industry. Governor LePage, who has no problem trotting out the issue of states' rights whenever it suits him, wants to defer to the wisdom of federal authorities, and told a pair of conservative radio talk show hosts who he calls into on a weekly basis that he would have just repealed last fall's adult use ballot measure if he had the power, which thankfully he does not. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our Twitter account at MJTodayDaily and visit our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Extractioneering, and to all of our awesome patron listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the patron listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with marijuana today.
One take, Shay. One take.